Hello, Internet. Welcome to the Monday morning 4D QB show. I am your humble host, LSL. This is going to be amazing. If you thought I had a lot of notes last time on my first two episodes, you haven't seen anything yet. Because of what my guest has accomplished on and off the field, especially where he played his high school football and became a legendary New Jersey high school quarterback at the expense of my alma mater, Bergen Catholic, we might just break the internet. Well, in New Jersey, at least, in New Jersey. It is my pleasure to introduce former Don Bosco Prep, Tennessee Volunteer, 7-year NFL quarterback who played for the Jets, Bills, and Falcons, ESPN TV, radio podcast host, and of course, head coach of hands down the #1 QB training organization in the tri-state area, maybe even the whole country. Quarterback. I'm thrilled and honored to announce my guest this week, Matt Sims. Thank you, Matt.
Appreciate it. Thank you. What an introduction. Yeah, you make everything that I've been through sound that much sweeter and nicer. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. So let's get right into this. First, I got to tell everybody how we met, how we became friends. People are probably like, what's going on? Can I call you my friend, and you're not going to get excommunicated from Bosco for doing my show, are you? Okay.
No, no, not at all. Not at all.
Oh,
I'm a friend of everyone here in the New Jersey area, and any rivalry and all that. That stuff is in the past. And
yep.
hey, now we help Bergen Catholic QBs, St. Joe's QBs, Bosco QBs. It's
Yep.
all love for the game.
I got my own Bosco snapper I work with. I love him to death. It's different after you graduate, which I was gonna get into later.
Yeah.
Um, Getting back to how we met, me and Matt both give our lessons on the same field. And that's how we met in Franklin Lakes. I gotta ask, the first time you saw me and my long snappers intruding onto your field, what was the what was the first thing going through your mind? What were you like? What?
No, not at all. I actually think it's one of those positions in football right now that is a little bit of an untapped niche. That of course, as our discussions that we've had on the side, is something that only people notice when it doesn't go well.
Yeah,
Other than that, though, it's an extremely important part of the game of football, the strategy behind it. And when it's executed beautifully, you never notice it. And that's the good thing about special teams. But it is something that I thought was really cool, really unique. And I think a lot of players would find it very advantageous to their careers if they developed that ability to add that versatility to their game.
all right. Thank you for acknowledging that. That's awesome. It's so funny because when you have a session that's done, the fathers and the students of yours are coming in through the gate. They got to pass me, and then they come back, and then you always have the father saying, this is great. You're doing this. Long snapper is very underrated position. Everybody's got to have a long snapper until he messes up. So it,
Definitely.
it's good. It's funny. By the way, pop quiz. Um, Senior year, do you remember who your long snapper was at Bosco?
My senior year long snapper.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Wow. I can't say that I do actually, unfortunately. I know that I was the backup, so I should know who the starter was.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I wasn't too thrilled about being the backup. I sabotaged as many drills as possible when I was placed in there, just to remind Coach Toal that I was not willing and able to do it all the time. But no, it seems to be slipping my mind right now. Yeah,
Wow.
I
Well,
know.
that's funny. A lot of quarterbacks are really good long snappers. That's why us long snappers, we call ourselves upside down quarterbacks.
Yeah, right.
Um, but yeah, the quarterbacks at Princeton they were like messing around one day, and I was like, oh my God.
No,
Like
wait. What's the pop? Do you know the answer to the pop quiz, or are you
I
just?
don't. I don't.
Oh,
I don't. I don't. I don't.
I'm
I
like, I
don't.
need to know this now.
I
Now you're
don't.
killing me. All
Oh
right.
my gosh, that
Yeah,
we
I got to go back and check this out, and I
um,
apologize to whoever it is because I know how important that position is to our success and with Coach Toll. But
especially
when you're with a guy like Coach Toll, your main objective is just to make sure that you're executing your job and responsibility as much as possible.
yeah.
And he made sure that I did that.
Yeah, that's so funny. So I'll never forget the first time we saw you at the field, my dad knew who you were. And one day at the end of my lessons, I'm exhausted. I've been working for 6 hours, and he goes to me and he's like, "Look, did you see Sims running around for 5 hours with 100 different kids and not repeating himself once, teaching so perfectly, and didn't say the word once? And because my dad hates when, because my dad was a speaker back in the day, and he hates when people said when they're teaching, and I'm like, um, no.
Yeah.
All right, Dad, were you not watching me? I didn't see anything.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry, Dad. I was a little distracted
I
with
was I
the
was a
other
little
things that I
distracted.
had going on and coaching and mentoring. I got a little
Uh,
distracted. My bad, man.
so he's
Yeah.
very impressed with your teaching as well as I am, which we'll get into later. As I say, coincidentally.
Yeah. It's all
Uh,
good. It happens, man.
so before we get into the Bosco Bergen part, I have a question, and it's kind of interesting. Do you say Bosco Bergen or Bergen Bosco?
Yeah, I think whatever school that you go to, you typically say your school first.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's the Bosco Bergen game for sure
Yeah.
because we kind of own that game. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't matter really, but it's a great tradition in our state.
Right.
I'm so honored and privileged to be a part of it.
Mhm.
And I've been really grateful to be a part of it in multiple facets from a player, from a coach's standpoint, from covering it with MSG this past year with Jimmy Cavallo. It's been a truly special part of my life, and I really enjoy still participating it as a fan just as much as anything, and really passing those things forward to the next generation so they can really enjoy that same experience that we had.
Cool. Cool. So yeah, before we get into that segment, I wanted to ask, is there any quarterback in the tri-state area from like age 8 to 18 that you don't train? I mean, it's amazing how many kids show up on a Saturday or Sunday, let alone during the week. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, you said it earlier. I'm thinking to myself, the only kid that Matt doesn't train is Dom. And I can just think to myself, if Dom went to you one day and comes home, he's like, Dad, Matt's starting to tell me to throw a righty.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, and for those who don't know, I'm talking about Dom Campanelli, starting quarterback at Bergen Catholic. All right. So how I mean, it's incredible how many kids you train, and um, it's really really impressive. They just, and I feel like I don't really see, like I see the same kids sometimes, but every
Mhm.
week I always see like 20 new kids. It's unbelievable.
Been very fortunate with just my experiences of coaching and playing, and really just the results that the players who have worked with me who that have had great success in their own careers. And it's just truly honored to be able to help these families, help these young athletes enjoy the game of football the way that I did as a football player, to pass along the same lessons that my father passed down to me, and to make sure that you're trying to make an impact in the game for the future generations as much as you possibly can.
Right.
And I've been fortunate and grateful enough that people trust me with their children and allow me to help mentor them in one of the most difficult positions in all of sports.
Yeah. It's great. And then coming back to the teaching aspect of it, I have like a two-part question. Does does your speaking come naturally to you when you're coaching, or do you practice? Because I'm still new to this coaching thing, and the biggest camps that I have are 12 kids. Because I see it similar with you as well, because once you go past that 12, 15 mark, it's kind of hard to actually teach kids, for the kids to get something away from it, to
Mhm.
get the kids to get something out of it. Explain what goes into your preparation of training so many quarterbacks. Again, arguably the hardest position in football, all at once.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic when I kind of go into some of my sessions with my students. Obviously, skill set, age, all that stuff, how many sessions that they've had with me previously, all those things kind of play into my approach to each and every session. Some sessions I have plans, and as the session starts, I see that kids maybe need to work on another aspect of their game that maybe is insufficient at the moment, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to adjust a little bit on the fly with being able to do this for the past few years, having different tools, as I like to say, on my bat belt to adjust to any circumstances that happens.
Mm.
And I've been very fortunate enough to obviously play the position for a really long time, to be coached by some phenomenal players and coaches, because there was players in my career that coached me just as much as some of my coaches. And I think through that development that I've had, it's able to allowed me to have a well-rounded take on the position and to be very multidimensional as far as how I coach and depending on who I'm coaching at that time. And then there's occasionally times where, you know, this as a coach, it doesn't matter. We're going to focus on this small, super, finite detail, and we're going to hammer it home until it's just second nature to you. Because if we don't do this, a lot of the other things that we'll go to later on will unravel and we won't be as successful at it. And one thing that I've tried to really implement is getting some of my older, more veteran quarterbacks that I've worked with for a longer period of time.
Mm.
I like to integrate them into some of my other sessions with a larger group setting of maybe like 6 quarterbacks with the one veteran.
Right.
And they almost help coach and mentor alongside me. And it's a great reinforcement tool for them because now they're seeing it and they're applying it in their own words, what they feel, how they feel through their reps, with the mistakes they've made personally, and then how to verbalize that to someone is extremely difficult, right? We all know what a great, feeling like hitting a home run feels like, but then to teach a kid how to hit a home run is very
Right.
difficult to verbalize that. So, uh, tons of repetition, and I'm very fortunate with some of my students that they've been able to pass those same lessons along. No pun intended. I keep saying pass along, but it kind of works in the situation of what we've taught to the next generation of QBs, that following them and look up to them as much as that they look up to me.
Mm. That's awesome. I can 100% relate to all of that. That was awesome. You train so many elite quarterbacks. I wanted to talk about two of them, two
Okay.
quarterbacks that are special to me. And I wanted to ask what you think is really special about them and how they'll do in college. The first one is Henry Balin. Okay. Henry was at Bergen initially. As
Right.
you know, our quarterback room was stacked at Bergen. We had Henry, Angeli, and DeNoble. Henry decides to transfer to Cardinal Hayes. Worked out perfectly for him. Now he's at Duke. I don't know who was more upset when he left, me or my dad.
Yeah.
My dad and his dad were like so close, and then Henry transfers. They can't see each other because of that and COVID, and then they have a reunion on the field because Henry's working with you and I'm working with my guys, and you just see these two like polar bears just running at each other. It was unbelievable. It was so funny. I was wondering what the first time that you saw Henry when you knew he was going to be special and what you think he's going to be doing at Duke.
That's the power of sports, right? What you just said, with Pastor, with your father, with our relationship with Henry, and that dynamic, the power of sports is just unbelievable. And for Pastor and for Henry to trust in me and to coach, to allow me to coach him, coming all the way from New York City, from the Bronx area to work here with us, just truly special and extremely grateful for that. And I think Henry Beelan is just a super talented football player, and I think he's got a lot of really really exciting things and opportunities headed his way. Had a fantastic spring with Duke. Obviously, comes from Cardinal Hayes in New York, which is I guess a version of like a Bergen or a Bosco in the New York Catholic High School Football League that for whatever reason hasn't quite gotten the same hype as maybe some of our Jersey schools here, but they are definitely on the rise and have a ton of high level Division I athletes in their schools and in their systems. And that's where, Henry, I think did the right thing. People thought that he was running away from competition. There's running away from competition and then there's just running to opportunity. And I think he ran to a new opportunity to give him the ability to show off his skill set, and it worked out well for everybody. Henry's at Duke, and Jelly's at Notre Dame, and Dean DeNoble had a fantastic spring at Lafayette after he left Bergen Catholic to go to Morris Catholic. So it's obviously you don't want to see kids transferring and moving around that often, but when it's necessary and when it's for the right reasons, I think it paid off great, and really excited for Henry. And dude is extremely talented. He really is. And I think with most players that you meet and train and work with, the talent is it's pretty easy to spot pretty quickly, right? The raw ability that somebody has. But
Yeah.
what you want to see is you want to see that natural IQ to the game to be able to apply what they're being taught immediately, right? Instead of saying a drill and then having to teach it over and over 100 times. Typically, the most talented football players with a high football IQ, right, as far as throwers and players, they're able to make those adjustments within the next rep or two. And
Right.
he's one of those guys that is able to do that. And typically, those guys go on to play football a little bit longer than others.
Right. And you're absolutely right that Henry's not a kid to run away from competition. He did not run away from competition. What would you do if I told you they were trying to make him a DB?
Honestly, he's a really good athlete, and I'm not shocked by that. And I would just say that if you looked at Pastor and saw the fact that Pastor's 6'6", Henry was going to be a really, really big DB.
Yeah.
And he's continued to grow into his body. I think now he's around like 6'4", 210, 215 pounds. He looks great.
He's 6'3".
And what's that?
He's like 6'2", 6'3" as a freshman.
Yeah, exactly. So he's one of those guys that just, he's growing into his body. He's maturing as an athlete, as a football player. And again, he had a fantastic spring at Duke. So I'm really excited for him to hopefully see some time in the field there this year in the ACC.
Cool. Awesome. Second quarterback is Jack Grusser.
Oh, all right.
Jack and his whole family, great people. Amazing, amazing kid. Same thing. Decision to leave BC for Ramapo, which worked out for him.
Really good football player, super high IQ, very similar to Henry, right? Guys are just making consistently good decisions with the football, and with their raw talent and physical ability on top of that, it's just unbelievable the plays that those two gentlemen had made in high school level, and why both of them are going to playing at a super high level of college football now. And there's no shock to it because they put in the work for it. They have the talent for it. They did really well in school, and now all those things, have created a great opportunity for them in the next step.
Right. And it's funny. Jack was my punter junior year
Yeah, he's a
before he
great
got,
punter.
before he got banged up, and then Angeli was amazing too.
Yes.
Did you ever punt? I know you said you were backup long snapper. Did you ever punt? Is it a thing that quarterbacks are good punters?
Most quarterbacks are great punters, and I was just one of those guys that, for whatever reason, I just never really cared to do it and never really tapped into maybe some of the potential that I had with it. But I was a quarterback and a good upside down quarterback as far as my long snapping goes. But I never really was super interested in the punting aspect of it, like most quarterbacks are.
It's funny. And obviously, Jack was committed to Harvard, which I was so happy for him, but I was also kind of worried, didn't really want to face him. Now he's going to Michigan. How do you think he'll do at Michigan? It's a big step because we were talking about it's interesting going from elite level of high school football, such as playing Bergen Bosco, but then you go Ohio State, Michigan, elite high school football to elite college football.
Mhm.
How big of a difference is that jump?
Yeah, I would say the jump from high school to college is bigger than college to the pros. And it really just is the fact that, you're a 17, 18-year-old young man, young teenage man. And when you get to college, I mean, you're dealing with guys that are, potentially 22, 23, 24, even 25 years old now, obviously with the portal and transfers and COVID and all that, that you're playing with basically grown men that have had a lot of experience playing the same game that you have, and just another level up as far as maturity goes physically.
Mhm.
The great thing about it, though, is that they played really high level football, and that high level football of being taught the right way by a lot of really good high school coaches in this area. I think that gives them a tremendous advantage of being able to be successful earlier rather than later in their careers. The one difficult thing, obviously, for all of us quarterbacks and long snappers, right, is just only one of us plays. So have to really maximize what you're doing mentally, physically, as much as possible when the other quarterbacks are getting their reps, and making sure that you're seizing your opportunity as much as possible when you're giving yours.
Right. Last question about your quarterbacks. Give us one guy everybody in New Jersey should worry about next year.
Ooh, yeah, I mean, I'll give you a few. I think for this year coming up, I mean, there's a few quarterbacks that are really interesting. I think obviously Patrick Grusser, Jack's younger brother, really interesting. His dynamic of transferring to St. Joe's and what they have over there. They have a really really athletic football team. So really curious to see how that plays out this season with him. New environment, back with Coach Brian Gibbs, who's a fantastic offensive coordinator here in the state of New Jersey. So that'll be an interesting dynamic. Deontay Ruffin down there in Camden is a phenomenal football player too. Really did a great job of putting together a fantastic sophomore season. He's looking to have a really big junior year coming up. Derek Zammit, the gentleman who replaces Patrick at DePaul, another interesting situation. He's a football player that played as a freshman, played extremely well, and looks like that he's set up to have a great sophomore season with the plethora of athletes that they have. And then even in New York, I think Richard Beelan, Henry's younger brother, he's going to be a second-year starter at Cardinal Hayes. Super talented football player, a really, really good runner. They were a little bit outmanned last year as far as a football team goes, a little discombobulated, but at the same time, a lot of talented players on that football team, and look for Richard Beelan to take a really big step up this year in his career over there at Cardinal Hayes.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's go to the end of your eighth grade year at the Sims home.
Okay.
Let's change gears a little bit. Your older brother Chris,
Yeah.
another legendary New Jersey quarterback, had
It is all right.
to go to Ramapo, which is the public school where you grew up.
Yes, sir.
You must have had every parochial school in New Jersey coming after you, as well as Ramapo. Why did you choose Bosco? Was it Coach Toal, the facilities? What put Bosco over the top? And I know I did, and 99% of kids do. Did you have any blowback from local friends? And I just fascinated. I'm sure my audience is on what that year and decision must have been like.
Yeah, that was an interesting year for sure, as far as just being a young man and diving into a world that I really had no idea what to expect.
Mhm.
And I think that's why it worked out too. I didn't have any expectations. I was just kind of listening to my heart and trusting my gut with the decision that I made. And going into it, I was Ramapo all the way. My whole eighth grade year, there really was no doubt I was going to Ramapo just like everyone else did in my family. And there really wasn't any hesitation about it. I felt comfortable with it. I was going to Rampo games my entire childhood, so I always kind of envisioned myself wearing that green.
Mhm.
And for whatever reason, I guess towards like the 11th hour of when it was time to kind of cement where you were going, I was presented an opportunity to go to Don Bosco for the day. Kind of do those walkthrough days where you go as a guest, right? And you're kind of taken around by an ambassador who shows you the school and shows you what everything's about. I went on one of those trips, really not thinking anything of it, honestly, just doing it to be polite to someone that invited me. And after I went through that experience, meeting the coaches, the school, other teachers there, other players and students that were there, there was just something that attracted me to that environment for whatever reason. And I'm someone that grew up in public schools my entire life,
Yeah.
never really was thinking about a Catholic high school education as something that was important to me.
Mhm.
But I like to tell people all the time that I didn't go to be an Iron Man. I went there because of all the Iron Men that were there that I wanted to help mentor and teach me. And guys like Nunzio Campanelli were obviously, big parts of that. Coach Greg Toal for sure. But even John Stanzak, the principal there, really good dude. Really have a ton of respect for him as a teacher and a mentor for me. So it was really very serendipitous for me with that opportunity to go there to meet these great people and then to be a part of it and to add my own little notch into the legacy of that school is something that I take tremendous pride in.
It's incredible. Was that the only parochial school you visited, or was there?
It was, yeah. I was
Yeah.
only going to Ramapo. I never really thought about going to Bergen. I told a few people like back in, when this process was going on, I was like, yeah, I'm going to Bergen, but I was kind of doing it just to mess with people.
That's fine.
But at that time too, that I don't think that the recruiting scene and all that was quite as aggressive.
Mhm.
People really weren't as like in tune with the youth sports quite as they are now. Where we got guys that are in sixth grade and they're always a 5-star. What does that mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's just a little strange. But I was fortunate enough to where I had some ability. I think the school saw that, the teachers, the coaches there saw that, and hey, they greeted me with open arms. Nothing was guaranteed to me, and I was fortunate enough to play on the varsity level of the team my freshman year, which is extremely stressful and extremely fun at the same time because it definitely prepared me to be an above average starter as a sophomore.
Wow, that's funny. We have the exact same story in terms of decision. I was Ramapo or nothing.
Yeah.
Visited Bergen because I had some friends on the FBU team that we
Hmm.
that we played on. I was like, all right, and just didn't want to leave. Became a Crusader.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same. That's funny. Um, I don't think most people know how, they see it. I don't think most people know how deep and maddening the rivalry is between Bergen and Bosco. We're listed as the number one rivalry in the country, and I don't think number two comes even close. And like we talked about earlier in the interview, your feelings change after you graduate. And do you remember? Because I don't remember, but do you remember the moment where you were Ramapo all the way? You're like, okay, I'm going to Bosco. Do you remember the moment? Now, hate's a strong word. Do you remember the moment where you were just sprayed with that Bergen hate mist, and it was just your job to beat Bergen no matter what, and the hate for Bergen that was there, and when you were
Yeah.
indoctrinated into it, and I don't remember what it is, but it's just how was it back in those days, especially with Toll at Bosco?
So it's really cool, that you bring this up because we think of Bergen Bosco right now and what it means to so many people and for so many generations.
Yeah,
And credit to Mike Quick too, because he did the Crusade on Joe Sandberg and Bergen Catholic. And I remember watching the Crusade, and this might have helped with my decision too, actually, now that I think about it a little bit more. But just to go back to the Crusade, there's a documentary that was way ahead of its time about Joe Sandberg and Bergen Catholic and their football team with Coach Stangl. But every time they played Bosco, I was like, whoa, who is this team? They're interesting. There's something about this team and this guy and their vibe that I really, really like and mesh with. And maybe that was like a little bit of a seed that was planted for me to be a little bit more attracted to them once I actually met all those people in person. But to get back to your question, um, when I was at Bosco, there really wasn't a rivalry per se. At that time, it was more so like we were little brother on the block. And the year before me, right, Brian Toll and them's junior season, they had the two big upsets where they beat you in the regular season and then the championship on your home field, which was something that was a little unexpected, right? And not everyone was really thinking that all of a sudden Bosco was this new thing. And it was really cool to really be a part of the building of what the rivalry is today. And I was fortunate enough to play against Bergen a handful of times through my freshman and senior year, and fortunately enough to come out on top of a lot of those victories to now actually call it a rivalry, because it has to be a rivalry when you actually win the game. And for a long time in the '90s, you guys and St. Joe's were really the two that were the dominant competitions in that field.
yeah, cool. So I was gonna ask you if you started freshman year. I didn't know.
I
So
didn't start freshman year. I was the backup to Mike Teal my freshman season.
okay,
But since we were such a good football team, I played in every game except for the state championship game. And I was very fortunate to almost throw for 1,000 yards as a freshman as a backup because we were so dominant with our starting unit.
wow, I did not know that. That's great to
Yeah,
know.
it was crazy. It was crazy. And Nunzio has a great, we share this story with people all the time that talk with us. We come out of the halftime, game at Giant Stadium for the state championship against Bergen. It's a really tight football game. It's one of the most stressful environments that I ever been in, and I was just watching right as a backup. And Nunzio, who was one of those guys that's a cool customer, we come out of this tunnel, we start warming up. He looks at me and he goes, Sims, He goes, "You ready?" He goes, "I'm starting you in the second half." And I was like, "What?" Like, I got so nervous. And all of a sudden he's like, "No, man, I'm just messing with you. We're not playing you." Yeah. So it was just really cool that in such a high stakes environment like that, with the crowd buzzing, old Giant Stadium, it just had a different gritty vibe to it.
Yeah,
That Nunzio still had that lightness about him to make a joke, in such a high stakes situation, and then to still be a great play caller and get us through that and eventually get the win.
that's awesome. That's great. Um, that I wouldn't. I know Nuns is that kind of guy, but that kind of joke, that's
Yeah, it's ballsy. Yeah.
over the books.
Yeah.
Before we moved on to college, was there any? And you mentioned Joe's and Bergen. Which team did you um not look forward to playing the most, and was there one player specifically that you did not look forward to playing against?
So my sophomore year, like, absolutely, it was one of those things where St. Joe's was absolutely loaded with some fantastic football players. The McCourty twins were on that football team. Bergen Catholic was absolutely loaded too as well, with guys like DeSalt, of course Brian Cushing, and then oh my God, I am blanking on some of these players, but fantastic football team loaded with absolute beasts all over the field. Both of these teams, and it was something that, my coaches stressed to me, just don't lose the game, right? We don't expect a sophomore quarterback to go in there and to dominate these games. We expect you to just manage our offense, keep everybody in the right position, and to succeed, right, as far as a team goes. And there was just really two instances in that year, my sophomore season, that St. Joe's totally got after me and kicked my butt all game, and I just was struggling, physically, really, to keep up with it. I was just getting hit a lot. And then it happened again in the state championship my sophomore season against Bergen Catholic, and Brian Cushing and those boys again one more time. Just physically, just got the crap beat out of me, really. And that's when I was like, I got to get in the weight room, because it reached that next level of, okay, good, I could throw the ball, I can make good decisions, I could be a good leader, I can get us in and out of what we're doing offensively and manage the game. Now I have to take my game to that next level and be a dominant football player in these matchups for us to win these games consistently. And those were great motivators, and that's what I think every competitor knows. Like, your great losses are really what you remember the most, and are more important to you than your great successes.
Right, it's important. I wanted to talk to you a minute about Coach Toal and what
Yeah.
he I had the honor of watching him coach at Bergen. He didn't spend too much time with the long snappers. Fortunately, he didn't make Angeli back. Um,
Yeah.
and when I had a semi rough snap, he let me know. Um, how amazing of a coach was Coach Toll, and what did he mean to you as a player and as a person, and how his effect that he had on you?
His effect on me is beyond words. It really is. And who he is as a person, who he was as a leader, is just something that, I think all of us who were there at that time, during the golden age of Don Bosco Prep football, we absolutely took it for granted for how special, our time was together as a team, and with those coaches that we had, because we had so many phenomenal football coaches that devoted their entire lives to that program at that time. And yeah, I mean, he's amazing. He's the best coach in the history of New Jersey football. I don't really think that there's like any debate what he did at multiple schools. I mean, he was there at Ramapo with my brother, and he won a state championship there. He won a state championship in Hackensack multiple times, and then his success at Don Bosco. And let's face it, if he never goes to Don Bosco might not even be open right now as a school. When he took over as a school, as the coach of the school, within my sophomore and junior year, I want to say that our student body almost doubled in size. We went from having about 150 freshmen every year to, the freshman years that were following me, there was 500 kids that were trying to get into the school. So the power that he had on athletics, on the entire program of football and all the other sports is really just, it's invaluable. There's really no way to quantify exactly how special that was. But I think now in his absence, you do see how special, that window of time was that he had there, and the people that he had molding us, and it's really something that I'm extremely grateful for, and I'm very fortunate that he's like family to me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's special. It's special, and especially when he left, and it had to have been like a gut punch to Bosco, and not just that he left, but he went to Bergen. Do you remember like where and when you were when you heard the news, and what your initial reaction was to that? And because it was earth shattering news to New Jersey high school football.
Yeah, for sure. It was. I remember where I was when Nunzio asked me what my thoughts are about him being the head coach at Bergen Catholic, and I remember obviously what happened when Coach Toal was relieved of his duties. He didn't leave Bosco; he was relieved of them, and I think that's where some of us who were a part of that group of people that went through those battles with him and won those state championships and all that kind of stuff, that we took it a little personal too there for a while, that our school, we felt like our school kind of betrayed the person that made our school what it was, to some extent, and I think that was very hurtful for a lot of us. I think it's still hurtful for some of us to this day too. There's certain teammates that I talked to, they were just like, yeah, I'll never go to another game again because of the way they treated Coach Toll. And it hurts for me and others to hear that, because we know sometimes politics and other things, we can only control so much, and we know also just how unique it is for other players to be a part of this great tradition that we have been a part of, and you don't want to take that away from anybody. You want them to enjoy it as much as you possibly can, much as they can, as we did. And it was unfortunately a very yeah, very, very conflicting feeling, obviously, because of my love for my school and the respect that I had for my time there, but also the disappointment that I had that they seemed to kind of just throw away this great person that made the school kind of what it is today.
That's intense.